knew this about him. His cargo clients knew this about him. His cargo clients knew this about him. Even his old flight instructor back on Earth had once told him that Cole Harris could turn a simple yes or no into a week-long project. So when he loaded his battered supply truck with 3 crates of dried protein packs and 2 boxes of nutrient grains that morning, he told himself it was just a donation run, nothing more. He was going to the shelter, dropping off the supplies and coming back home. Simple, clean, no complications. He told himself this the entire drive over. The shelter sat at the edge of the colony's eastern district, a wide, low building made of pale gray composite panels with large reinforced windows along the front wall. A faded sign above the entrance read, Valley Creature Welfare Center, in both standard human script and 2 alien dialects. The parking area was mostly empty. A light morning mist was still sitting low over the ground, and the air smelled of damp earth and something faintly metallic, the way it always did near the eastern edge where the soil had high mineral content. Cole parked, unloaded the crates onto a hand cart, and pushed it toward the entrance. The doors slid open, and a wave of warm air came out to meet him. It carried the smell of animal bedding, antiseptic solution, and something sweeter underneath, like dried fruit or plant matter. The front desk was a wide, curved counter with a holographic intake screen floating above it. Behind the counter, sorting through a stack of care folders, was a small alien woman with pale amber skin and large, dark eyes. She had 4 fingers on each hand and small ridges along her jaw that Cole had come to recognize as a sign of cheerfulness in her species. Her name tag read Zira. She looked up and her ridges shifted upward immediately. "Cole," she said, and her voice carried the slight harmonic layering that her species naturally produced. "You brought supplies again." "Just dropping things off," he said, parking the cart beside the counter. "You said that last time," she said, "and the time before. And then you spent 2 hours talking to the old sand crawler in Enclosure 7. He was lonely. They are all lonely, Cole. That is why they are here." He had no answer for that, so he just signed the intake form she pushed toward him and handed over the crates one at a time. Zero logged each one efficiently, her dark eyes flicking between him and the screen. "Since you are here," she said in the tone of someone who had been waiting to say something, "would you like to walk the floor? We have 3 new arrivals this week." Cole opened his mouth to say no. "Sure," he said instead. Zira smiled, which on her species looked like a slight parting of the lips and a deepening of the jaw ridges. She came around the counter and led him through the interior door and into the main care corridor. The corridor was long and wide, with enclosures on both sides separated by thick, transparent panels. The lighting was warm and adjusted automatically to the needs of each resident. Some enclosures were bright, some dim. Some held an orange-tinted glow that mimicked the light of distant star systems. Cole passed a 2-headed lizard creature sleeping in a pile of its own coils. He passed a floating membrane creature that drifted lazily near its ceiling. He passed something that looked like a large moth with heavy plated armor who watched him with calm silver eyes as he walked by. Zira narrated as they walked, explaining species, origins, temperaments. Cole listened, nodding. He asked questions when he had them. He always asked questions. They went deeper into the corridor. The enclosures here were larger, built for bigger residents. And then, near the very end of the hall, Cole slowed down. The last enclosure was the largest. It had high ceilings, a textured floor designed to mimic rock and earth, and a heat lamp positioned in the far corner casting a dull orange glow. There was a water basin, a food tray that had not been touched, and a pile of thick ground covering near the back wall. And on that pile of ground covering, facing the wall, curled so tightly that Cole almost missed him, was a dragon. He was not large by dragon standards, not that Cole was an expert, but he was large enough to fill most of the enclosure if he stretched out. His scales were a dull, pale gray, almost the color of ash on cold stone. His wings were folded flat against his body. His tail was wrapped around himself like he was trying to take up as little space as possible. He did not move when Cole stopped at the panel. He did not turn his head. Cole stood there for a moment and said nothing. "His name is Ash," Zira said quietly, coming to stand beside him. "The staff gave him that name. His original name in Varath language does not translate well." "Varath," Cole repeated. "A rare species. They bond once, only once in their whole life." Zira paused. "His rider died 8 months ago. A starship collision near the outer relay. Ash was the only survivor." Cole kept looking at the dragon. Ash had not moved at all, not even the small, restless shifting that most animals did when a stranger came close. "He hasn't eaten in 3 weeks," Zira said. "We have tried everything. Different foods, different staff members, different environments. She stopped. "He just faces the wall." Cole pressed his hand flat against the transparent panel. Ash did not turn around, but one of his ears, small and ridged at the top of his skull, tilted very slightly backward. Just barely. Almost nothing. Cole noticed it anyway. "How long has he been here?" Cole asked. 6 months, Zira said. Cole did not say anything for a long time. The warm light from the heat lamp made Ash's dull scales look almost silver for a moment, almost like something that used to shine. "What happens," Cole said slowly, "if nobody adopts him?" Zira was quiet for just a beat too long. Cole turned to look at her. Her jaw ridges were flat. He turned back to the enclosure. Ash was still facing the wall, still curled small, still not eating, still just waiting for something that was not coming. Cole exhaled slowly through his nose. "I came here to drop off food," he said, more to himself than to her. "I know," Zira said softly. "I wasn't planning on this." "I know." Cole looked at Ash one more time. That small ear, that almost nothing tilt. "I'll take him," Cole said quietly. The paperwork took longer than Cole expected. There were forms for species handling certification, forms for habitat compliance, forms confirming that his property met the minimum space requirements for a creature of Ash's size and classification. There was a temperament disclosure document that Zero walked him through carefully, pausing at certain sections to make sure Cole understood what he was agreeing to. One section was titled, "Bonding Loss Behavioral Risks." Zero read it out loud in a quiet, even voice. It described the ways a Varath in grief could behave. Withdrawal, refusal to eat. In some cases, unpredictable physical responses if startled or cornered. In rare cases, the grief became permanent. The dragon simply never came back to himself. Cole read that section twice. Then he signed it. Zira processed everything without comment, but her jaw ridges stayed soft and low the entire time, the way they did when she was feeling something she was choosing not to say out loud. It took 3 shelter staff members and a wheeled loading frame to get Ash into the transport carrier. The dragon did not resist. That was almost worse. He simply allowed himself to be moved, limp and indifferent, as if nothing that happened to him mattered anymore. His eyes stayed half closed the whole time. His color, in the bright white light of the loading bay, looking even duller than it had in the enclosure. Cole drove home slowly. He checked the rearview display twice every minute. Ash lay flat in the carrier and did not move. When they arrived, Cole had already prepared a space. He had spent the previous evening clearing out the far end of his cargo hangar, which was attached to the side of his house. It was a wide, high-ceilinged space, used mostly for storing equipment and doing maintenance work on his ship when it was grounded. He had laid down 3 layers of heavy thermal matting across a large section of the floor. He had set up 2 industrial heat lamps on tall, adjustable stands, angled so the warmth spread evenly. He had filled a wide basin with clean water and placed a food tray nearby with a variety of proteins that the shelter's care sheet had listed as appropriate for Varath. He had also moved his old workshop chair to the edge of the space, near the wall, with a small side table beside it. He opened the carrier doors and waited. Ash did not come out on his own. Cole did not rush him. He left the doors fully open and walked to his chair and sat down. He picked up the technical manual he had been reading the night before and opened it to his page. After about 20 minutes, Ash stepped out of the carrier on his own. He stood in the middle of the hangar floor, looked at the space around him with dull, slow eyes, and then walked to the far corner, the one farthest from Cole, and curled himself down onto the thermal matting. He faced the wall. Cole turned a page in his manual. That was the first day. The days that followed had a quiet rhythm to them. Cole worked his cargo schedule around being home as much as possible in those early weeks. When he was in the hangar doing maintenance on his ship, he talked. Not to Ash specifically, not in a way that demanded anything. He just talked the way some people talk when they are working alone and the silence gets a little heavy. He talked about the cargo run he had done that morning, a delivery of agricultural parts to a farming settlement 2 systems over. He talked about a pressure valve on his ship's port thruster that had been giving him trouble for a month. He talked about the weather on the colony, which had been unusually dry, and about a food stall near the Eastern Market that made a flatbread he had become unreasonably attached to. Ash did not respond to any of it. He faced the wall and breathed slowly. But Cole kept talking anyway. The food tray went untouched for the first 4 days. Cole replaced it each morning with fresh portions, removed the old ones without making a fuss, and said nothing about it. On the 5th day, he moved the tray a little closer to where Ash was lying. Not close enough to crowd him, just closer. He did it casually, as if he was just tidying up. On the morning of the 7th day, Cole came into the hangar and the tray was not where he had left it. It was pushed slightly to the side. A portion of the food was gone. Not all of it, just a small amount eaten carefully, like Ash had not wanted Cole to notice. Cole looked at the tray for a moment. Then he set down the new portions he had brought, picked up his tools, and got under his ship to work on the thruster valve. He did not say anything about it. He did not make it a moment. He just kept going. A few days later, his neighbor Dana came by. She was a cargo pilot like Cole, lean and practical, with short dark hair and the kind of eyes that had seen enough of the outer systems to stop being surprised by most things. She stood at the hangar entrance with a cup of coffee in each hand and looked at Ash in the far corner. Ash did not acknowledge her. "Cole," she said, handing him a cup, "I say this because I actually like you. That dragon is going to break your heart." "Maybe," Cole said. "Varath don't rebond. Everyone knows that. The research is pretty clear on it." "Research isn't always the whole story." Dana looked at Ash again. Ash's back was to both of them. His scales were still that flat, dull gray. His tail was still wrapped tight around himself. "He looks like he's already gone," she said, not unkindly. "He ate yesterday," Cole said, "and the day before." Dana was quiet for a moment. She sipped her coffee. She looked at Cole the way people looked at someone who had made up their mind about something and was not going to unmake it. "All right," she said finally. "But if that thing bites you, I'm not flying you to the med center." "Yes, you will," Cole said. "Yes, I will," she agreed. She finished her coffee, handed him back the empty cup, and left. Cole turned around. Ash had not moved, still facing the wall, still curled small. But that morning, when Cole sat down in his chair and opened his manual, he noticed something. The thermal matting where Ash was lying, it was no longer in the farthest corner. At some point, without Cole seeing it happen, Ash had shifted. Just slightly. Just enough. He was a little closer than he had been yesterday. Cole did not move his chair. He did not say anything. He just turned his page and kept reading, and let the quiet in the hangar stay exactly the way it was. 3 weeks had passed since Ash came home. He was eating every day now. Not large amounts, not the full portions Cole left out, but enough. Enough that his ribs were no longer visible beneath his scales when he breathed. Enough that he was moving around the hangar on his own sometimes, slow and careful, like a man learning to walk again after a long illness. His color had not changed much. Still that dull, pale gray, still flat and without depth. But Cole had started to notice, in certain light, especially in the late afternoon when the sun came through the hangar's high side windows at a low angle, there was something underneath. A faint trace of something darker, something that might have been blue once, buried under all that ash gray. Cole noticed it but said nothing. Their routine had settled into something comfortable. Cole worked in the hangar most mornings, doing maintenance or reviewing cargo manifests at his side table. He talked when he felt like talking and stayed quiet when he did not. Ash moved around the space on his own schedule, drank from the water basin, sometimes sat near the heat lamps with his eyes half closed. He had not yet looked directly at Cole. Not once, not fully. But he had stopped facing the wall. That was something. That morning, Cole was working underneath his ship. It was a mid-sized cargo hauler, old but reliable, with a long, flat undercarriage and a series of access panels along the belly that required regular attention. He was on his back on the rollerboard, inching his way toward the port side panel that housed the secondary pressure coupling. The thruster valve issue had turned out to be connected to a loose coupling bracket further back, and he had been working his way toward it for 2 days. He found the bracket. It was worse than he had thought. The fastening had sheared partially on one side, and the bracket was sitting at an angle, pressing against the adjacent line. He reached in with his tool and tried to get the right angle. The space was tight. He shifted his weight on the rollerboard, repositioned his arm, and pulled. The panel edge caught his hand. It was a deep cut, running across the base of his palm and up toward his wrist. The kind that did not hurt immediately, but made itself known a second later in a sharp, clear wave. Cole pulled his arm out and looked at it. The cut was bleeding steadily, dark and wide. He exhaled slowly through his teeth. "All right," he said quietly to nobody. He started to sit up on the rollerboard, reaching for the small supply kit he kept clipped to the undercarriage rail. It was an awkward angle. He got his fingers on the kit but fumbled the latch, and it dropped and slid 2 feet away across the floor. He was reaching for it when he heard movement. Not the usual slow, indifferent movement Ash made when walking to the water basin or shifting position near the heat lamps. This was different. This was deliberate. This was quick. Cole went still. Ash crossed the hangar floor in a low, steady walk, his head extended forward, his eyes sharp and focused in a way Cole had never seen before. He came directly to where Cole was sitting half under the ship, and he stopped. He looked at Cole's hand. He looked at the blood. His nostrils moved, reading the air. Cole did not move. He kept his breathing even. He did not want to do anything that would break whatever this was. Ash lowered his head slowly. He angled it to the side, examining the cut with one large eye, close enough that Cole could feel the warmth radiating off the scales of his jaw. Then Ash opened his mouth slightly and breathed out. It was not fire. It was not heat in the burning sense. It was a thin, soft mist, warm and carrying a faint smell like mineral water and something herbal underneath. It settled over Cole's hand in a slow drift, and where it touched the cut, Cole felt the sharp edge of the pain pull back. Not disappear, but soften, the way pain does when the worst moment of it passes. Cole sat completely still. Ash held the position for a long moment. Then he closed his mouth and pulled his head back slightly and looked at Cole. Not at Cole's hand, not at the injury, at Cole. Directly, fully, for the first time. His eyes were a deep, dark color, hard to name, not quite brown, not quite gold. Something between the two, with a quality to them like old amber held up to low light. They were not the dull, flat eyes Cole had watched staring at the wall for 3 weeks. There was something in them now, something present. Something that was looking at Cole the way a thinking creature looks at another thinking creature, measuring, considering, deciding. Cole met his eyes and stayed very still and said very quietly, "Thank you, Ash." Ash held the eye contact for another long moment. Then he settled. He did not go back to his corner. He did not walk away to the heat lamp or the water basin. He lowered himself to the floor right there beside Cole and pressed the side of his body lightly against Cole's leg. Not hard, not demanding, just present. Just there. Cole did not move for a long time. He sat with his back against the undercarriage of his ship and his injured hand resting in his lap, and Ash warm and solid against his side, and he looked up at the ceiling of the hangar and breathed. After a while, he reached over carefully with his good hand and picked up the first aid kit from where it had slid across the floor. He cleaned and wrapped his hands slowly, one-handed, not rushing. Ash watched him do it. That evening, Cole called Zira. She answered on the second tone, her amber face appearing on the small screen with her usual efficient expression. "Cole," she said, "is everything all right?" "Ash initiated contact today," Cole said. Zira's jaw ridges went very still. "What kind of contact?" "He crossed the hangar on his own, came directly to me. He used the healing breath on my hand when I cut it." The silence that followed was longer than Cole expected from someone as composed as Zira. "Cole," she said finally, and her voice had changed slightly. "Varath healing breath is not a small thing. They do not do that casually. They do not do that for strangers. In their culture, offering the healing breath is one of the most significant gestures of trust a Varath can give. It is something they reserve only for those they consider bonded." Cole looked across the hangar. Ash was still lying near the ship, not in his corner, not facing the wall. He was watching Cole from across the room with those amber dark eyes. "He stayed beside me afterward," Cole said. "He is still over there now." Zira made a soft sound that Cole could not fully translate. Then she said, "I have worked in creature welfare for 11 years. I have never seen a grief-bonded Varath initiate contact voluntarily. Not once." Cole watched Ash, watching him. "He just needed someone to stay," Cole said quietly. He did not realize in that moment that he had just said the most important thing he would ever say about any of this. He was just stating what seemed obvious to him. Simple and plain, the way Cole Harris said most things. Ash held his gaze from across the hangar, and for the first time since coming home, Ash made a sound. Low and quiet, felt more in the chest than heard with the ears. Not a growl, not distress. Something that might have been, in whatever language dragons kept inside themselves, the closest thing to peace. 6 weeks after the day in the hangar, Ash was a different creature. Not completely, not all at once. It had happened the way most real things happen, slowly, in small steps, each one easy to miss on its own, but impossible to ignore when you looked back at all of them together. He was eating full portions now, every day without fail. The food tray was always empty by morning. His body had filled out, the sharp angles softening, the visible bones beneath his scales no longer showing. He moved through the hangar with a different quality to his steps, not the slow, reluctant drag of the first weeks, but something more settled. More like a creature who had decided, quietly and privately, that this place was his. And his color was changing. It had started small. A few scales along his neck, just beneath the jaw, had shifted from that flat ash gray to something with depth in it. A dark blue, rich and deep, like the color of sky just after the last of the light leaves it. Then it spread. Slowly, over days, moving down his neck and across his shoulders. Silver began to show along the edges of his wing membranes. His underbelly, previously pale and dull, had taken on a faint iridescent quality that caught the light when he moved. Cole watched it happen and said nothing about it. He just watched. Ash had also started coming on the short cargo runs. It had begun by accident. Cole had left the hangar side door open one morning while he was doing pre-flight checks on his ship, and when he turned around, Ash was standing at the base of the loading ramp looking up at it with calm, curious eyes. Cole had considered the situation for a moment. Then he had walked up the ramp, left it down, and gone to finish his checks. When he came back through the cargo hold, Ash was inside, folded into the wide space behind the cockpit bulkhead with his wings tucked and his head low to fit under the ceiling. Cole had stood there, looked at him and said, "You can come if you want." Ash had not moved, which, from Ash, meant yes. They had done 6 runs together since then. Ash rode in the hold, settled and quiet, and Cole flew. On landings and departures, he made low sounds in his chest. Not distress, just awareness, the way a passenger might grip an armrest without realizing it. By the 4th run, he had stopped making the sounds. By the 6th, he was asleep before they cleared the upper atmosphere. It was on the seventh run that things got complicated. Cole had a delivery to make at a mid-sized trading post called Relay Station 4, a commercial hub 3 systems out that handled a high volume of independent cargo traffic. It was a routine drop. Agricultural equipment parts for a contractor Cole had worked with for years. He had made this run dozens of times. He landed in Bay 7, lowered the ramp, and began moving the cargo containers to the bay edge with the loader. Ash sat at the top of the ramp and watched. The contractor's representative came to sign off on the delivery. He was a big man named Gary, wide through the shoulders, who worked for a distribution outfit that controlled most of the receiving contracts at the station. Cole had always found him manageable, professionally courteous in the way that people are when money is involved. But Gary had brought 2 others with him today, and today something was different. They waited until the containers were fully offloaded. Then Gary told Cole that the payment terms were changing, that the outfit was restructuring its independent contracts, that Cole's rate was being cut by 30%, effective immediately and retroactively applied to the current delivery. Cole went still in the way he went still when he was thinking carefully. That was not the agreement, Cole said. Agreements change, Gary said. He said it easily, the way someone says something when they have 2 large people standing behind them and the other person is alone. Except Cole was not alone. Ash came down the ramp. He did not run. He did not make a sound. He walked down the ramp at a steady pace and came to stand beside Cole, and he was, in that moment, very large. Larger than he seemed in the hangar somehow, the way creatures seem larger when they are in motion and fully present. His wings were folded but slightly raised at the joint, which Cole had learned meant Ash was paying close attention. His color, the deep blue and silver that had been returning over weeks, caught the bay lighting and held it. His eyes were on Gary. Gary stopped talking. The 2 men behind him took a step back without appearing to decide to. Ash did not growl. He did not bare teeth. He simply stood beside Cole and looked at Gary with the calm, patient attention of a creature that had no reason to be afraid of anything in the room. The silence lasted several seconds. "We can honor the original terms," Gary said. His voice had a different quality now. "Good," Cole said. The payment came through before Cole finished closing up the cargo bay. On the flight home, Cole sat in the cockpit and Ash was folded behind the bulkhead, and Cole said, "You did not have to do that." Ash made the low chest sound. "But thank you," Cole said. Ash was asleep before they cleared the system. Word traveled the way word traveled in cargo circles, which was fast and without much accuracy, but enough truth in the middle of it to matter. By the time Cole made his next 2 runs, the story had already moved ahead of him. The human with the Varath. The dragon that stood up in Bay 7 without being told. People at the stations were respectful in a way they had not always been before. Cole did not love the attention, but Ash seemed entirely unbothered by it. Then Zira called. She appeared on his screen with her jaw ridges raised high, which Cole had learned meant something significant was happening. "The Varath Cultural Council has made contact with the shelter," she said. "They have been monitoring Ash's situation since his rider died. They received reports about what has been happening, about his recovery, about the bond forming." "All right," Cole said carefully. "They are proposing a formal bond recognition ceremony," Zira said. "It is extremely rare. It is only initiated when the council determines a new bond is genuine." She paused. "Cole, in recorded Varath history, this has happened 4 times." Cole was quiet for a moment. "What does it involve?" he asked. "You would appear before the council elder. There would be questions, and Ash would need to confirm the bond publicly in the traditional way." Zira's jaw ridges softened slightly. "It is an honor, Cole, a real one, but it is also your choice." Cole looked across the hangar. Ash was lying near the ship, the blue and silver of his scales catching the afternoon light through the high windows. He looked healthy. He looked present. He looked like himself, whatever that self was still becoming. Cole thought about the shelter, about the wall, about the untouched food tray. about a small ear tilting back at the sound of a stranger's presence. "When is it?" Cole asked. The ceremony was held on neutral ground. The Varath Cultural Council had chosen an open-air platform on the surface of a small, quiet moon 2 systems from the colony. It was a place with no commercial traffic, no cargo routes, no stations nearby. Just wide, flat stone, pale gray and smooth, stretching out under an open sky that shifted between deep violet and soft amber, depending on where you looked. 3 moons of the nearby gas giant hung visible in the daylight sky, enormous and still. Cole had never been anywhere so quiet. There were maybe 40 people present. Council members in formal coverings of dark blue and copper. A small group of Varath observers, older dragons who sat along the far edge of the platform like living statues, watching with patient eyes. Zira was there, standing near the back with her jaw ridges raised so high they were nearly flat against her face, which Cole had come to understand meant she was trying very hard not to show how much something was affecting her. Dana had come too. Cole had not asked her to. She had simply appeared at his ship that morning with her arms crossed and said she was not letting him do something this significant without a witness he actually knew. Cole had not argued. Ash walked beside Cole onto the platform. He was, in that moment, the most striking thing Cole had ever seen. The full color had come back over the past 2 weeks in a final rush, as if his body had been waiting for something to complete the process. The deep blue ran from the base of his skull all the way to the tip of his tail, rich and dark as deep water. The silver traced every scale edge and ran in clean lines along his wing membranes. His underbelly held that soft, iridescent quality that shifted between pale blue and white, depending on the angle of the light. He did not look like the creature who had faced the wall in the shelter. He did not look like the Ash that Zira's staff had named out of quiet sadness. He looked like what he actually was, a Varath in full, alive and present and whole. The council elder was a small, elderly being, not a dragon, but a species Cole did not recognize, with pale, translucent skin and very slow, deliberate movements. She wore deep copper coverings and carried a thin staff of dark wood. She spoke in the standard common dialect without needing a translator, her voice thin but steady and clear. She welcomed Cole. She acknowledged Ash. She explained to those present, briefly and without theater, what this ceremony represented. A new bond, a second beginning, something the council had not formally recognized in living memory. Then she looked at Cole and asked him directly, "Why did you choose this dragon when no one else would?" The platform was very quiet. The light shifted slightly overhead as one of the distant moons moved. Cole had thought about this question since Zira had first told him it would be asked. He had considered different ways to answer it. Longer answers, more complete ones. Answers that explained the logic of it, the timeline, the small daily moments that had added up to something he had not planned on. In the end, standing there on that pale gray stone under that vast, quiet sky, he said the only thing that had ever actually been true. He just needed someone to stay. The elder was still for a moment. Her eyes, pale and deep at the same time, held Cole's face. Then she turned to the Varath observers along the edge of the platform and spoke several words in the Varath tongue. Cole did not understand them, but he saw the reaction. The old dragons, those still and patient watchers, shifted. Several lowered their heads slightly. One made a sound deep in its chest that traveled across the platform like a slow wave. Zira made a very small sound behind him. Cole did not look back, but he heard it. The elder turned back to Cole. "In the Varath language," she said quietly, "the one you just described, the one who stays. It is a title. It is the highest name a Varath can give to a bonded companion. It is older than most of the words we still use." She paused. "You did not know this?" "No," Cole said. "And yet you said it," she said. She looked at him for another moment. Then she stepped back and turned toward Ash. "Let the dragon speak for himself." The platform went completely silent. Ash, for a long moment, reading something in Cole's face that Cole himself could probably not have named. Then Ash lowered his head, all the way down, slowly, with full intention, the way a creature moves when it is doing something that matters. He brought his head level with Cole's chest and then lower, until his brow, that broad, flat place just above his eyes, rested gently against Cole's open hand. The pressure was light, barely there, like something being trusted rather than given. Nobody on the platform made a sound. Cole closed his fingers very gently against the side of Ash's jaw. He did not say anything. There was nothing to say that the moment had not already said better. The elder spoke one word in the Varath tongue. Cole later learned it meant witnessed. After the ceremony, there was a long, quiet period where people spoke in low voices, and the Varath observers departed one by one back into the sky. Dana appeared beside Cole with 2 cups of something warm and handed him one without a word. She looked at Ash, who was standing nearby watching the last observers leave. "All right," she said eventually. "I was wrong." "You were looking out for me," Cole said. "Same thing sometimes," she said, but she said it without weight. 3 months later, a message came through Cole's communication system from an address he did not recognize. He almost flagged it as commercial noise, but the header listed a personal name and a colony identifier, and something made him open it. It was from the family of Ash's first rider, a woman named Patricia, and her younger brother Owen. They had heard, through the Varath Council's public record of the ceremony, what had happened. They had spent 2 months deciding whether to reach out. The message was not long. It said that their brother and son, whose name had been Ryan, had loved Ash from the first day of their bonding. It said that when Ryan died, they had grieved for Ash separately and quietly because they had no way to reach him and no way to know if he was still alive. It said that reading the council's record, learning that Ash had found someone, learning that he had come back to himself, had given them something they had not expected to feel again. It said thank you. Cole read the message twice. Then he walked out to the hangar and sat down in his chair. Ash was near the ship, lying in the way he liked best now, head resting on his front legs, tail out behind him, taking up a completely unreasonable amount of floor space and appearing to have no opinion about this. Cole read the message out loud to him. Slowly, simply, the way he said most things. Ash was very still while Cole read. When Cole finished, the hangar was quiet for a long moment. Then Ash lifted his head and turned and pressed it against Cole's shoulder, the same way he had at the ceremony, slow and deliberate, and full of something that did not need a word around it. Cole sat with him for a long time. That night they made a cargo run, a short one, just 2 systems out and back. The stars came through the cockpit window in long, pale lines as they made the jump, and Ash was in the co-pilot seat, far too large for it, wings folded at odd angles, tail hanging off the edge, entirely unbothered by any of this. Cole looked at him at some point during the cruise and thought about a morning some months ago when he had loaded a supply truck with protein packs and told himself he was just going to drop off some food and come straight home. He almost smiled. Outside the window, the stars were everywhere, quiet and without end, and Ash was asleep before they reached the midpoint of the run, making that low sound in his chest that Cole had come to know as well as his own heartbeat. The saddest dragon from the shelter, the one nobody had wanted. Cole adjusted the flight trim, checked the cargo readout, and let him sleep.